We're so glad that you're here on this special Sunday. This is our first Biker Sunday this morning. We're in conjunction with Shout Week at the Noble School System, and we are hosting a poker run right after church. And so this is going to be a great time with some friends. And but we're so glad that you're here today with us. As you can tell, we got a couple bikes up here on stage, and Philip so graciously wanted to display his bike in front of all, and he knows that this video goes viral and gets put on YouTube, so he's like, my bike's going to be seen worldwide now. So, but as you can tell, we got two differently distinct bikes up here. Philip's is a street bike. It is super fast. Sits differently than most other bikes, and not very much chrome on here, but an awesome bike that is displayed. And over here you have another bike, more of a custom cruiser type bike. Totally blacked out. Oh, this is my bike. So just want everybody to know that. And I'm proud it's going viral as well. So, but this is another awesome bike. About a year ago, I wanted to get a motorcycle. I had always been a motorcycle enthusiast. I'd always wanted to get one. I'd rode dirt bikes growing up back in the day, but never had the opportunity to get a street bike to go cruising with. And so last year I had the opportunity to do that. And, as I began to look around to see what was available either on Craigslist or through a dealership or whatever, bikes are a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. But the cool thing about bikes is everything is different about a bike. It's very difficult to find one that is exactly the same. Everything is different about them. And one reason why I like this one, I looked at it, and it just jumped out at me and said, buy me. And it's totally blacked out. There's not much chrome on it whatsoever. I've never seen one like this before. It's just not around there. I'm one that if I see somebody have something, I don't want that one. Even though I like it, I don't want it because I want one of my own. I want one that looks totally different, right? And but they're all different. All bikes are different. Some bikes have more things on them, more pleasure items on them, so to speak, than others. Papa John, I don't know if he might be over at the other building right now. Papa John has an awesome Harley Davidson bike, and his bike has all the bells and whistles on it. All right, I mean he's got a radio. I do not. Okay, he has a windshield. I do not. I wish I did. He has like a big suitcase thing sticking on the back. He's got a trailer. His is decked out and has everything that you could possibly want or need on a motorcycle. All motorcycles are different. They're totally different. And one thing I want to talk to you guys this morning about is even though bikes are different, there's something in common about a motorcycle. One, you get on them the same way. You get on a bike the same way, okay? You get on it at the beginning of your trip. Two, at the end of the trip, everybody's going to get off the bike the same way, okay? So you get on the same way, you get off the same way. And in between, there's a thing called balance. And while you're riding, you can be cruising and you can be looking at all the scenery and everything that's passing by. But the main thing that you have to maintain while you're riding a motorcycle is balance. You have to have balance. If you don't have balance, you're going to spend every waking moment on the ground, falling over. Okay? And in turn, no one's going to want to ride with you because they're going to be like, the dude has no balance, he can't ride, sit him to the back of the pack. We don't want him in the middle, and we don't want him leading us, okay? So you want to make sure that you have balance. There's a gentleman in the Bible that at the beginning of his life did not have much balance. Didn't have much balance in his life whatsoever. He would go to and from, he would check out the scenery and partake, and he would do this and do that. But God was not directly in his life. He did not have balance in his life. And I want to read to you a little bit about him this morning. He's mentioned in the Gospels more than any other name other than Jesus. No one speaks as often as him, yet no one is spoken to by Jesus as often as him. No disciple is frequently rebuked by the Lord, and no disciple ever rebukes the Lord except him. No one else confessed Christ more boldly and more explicitly, yet no other disciple ever verbally denied Christ as forcefully and publicly as he did. No one is praised and blessed by Christ the way he was, yet he was also the only one Christ ever addressed as Satan. Jesus had harsher things to say to him than he ever said to any other disciple. This disciple is called Simon. And that was the name that he was given. He was a fisherman by trade. He had some people working with him, probably earned this business through family. Maybe his dad was a fisherman back in the day, and he assumed the business from him. So Simon was a fisherman. That's how he lived his life. That's what he did. And I can only imagine the lifestyle that he had as a fisherman. Probably a very wild lifestyle, probably a very rough, wild lifestyle. But that's who Simon was. And as Jesus comes on the scene, and he begins to call for his disciples, as he begins to call for the ones to follow him so he can teach and guide and lead and direct, he came upon Simon. And the first words that Jesus ever said to Simon is found in 1 John. It says, "You are Simon, the son of John, but you shall be called Cephas," which means Peter. Those are the first words ever that Jesus spoke to Simon. And he automatically gave him a new name. He said, "No longer will you be called Simon, but you're going to be called Peter." Peter also means the rock. See, what Jesus seen in Peter was he's a little rough around the edges. He has a few things in his life that is not grand, but he's a hard worker. He's willing to learn. Obviously, he has a business, so he can become a great leader, if not already. But Jesus seen something different. He's seen something special with Peter. So he gave him a brand new name. As the story goes on, you can find Peter, like it said, you can find Peter being mentioned in all throughout the Gospels, and then later on in the New Testament and some other books. But Peter, he always spoke before he thought. Now, if I was wanting to have a motorcycle club, if I was wanting to start a motorcycle gang, and if there was anybody in the Bible that I would take Peter. Why? Because I think he would be exciting. He would be riding his bike, and he would see something, and he would just blurt out something. It would probably make me laugh, and I would probably follow Peter. That's probably what I would do. But Peter is the one guy that I would probably take on as somebody that would be in a motorcycle club or a motorcycle gang. He always spoke before he thought about what he's speaking about. He always did things that were out of the ordinary. But he was one that was always the first one to speak. He was always the first one to act on something. There's stories in the Gospels. For one, he was in a boat with some of the other disciples, and they'd been fishing all night, and they caught zero. They caught zilch. They didn't catch a thing. Jesus comes on and says, "Hey, you've been fishing all night?" "Yeah, we have. We haven't caught a thing." He says, "Why don't you just cast your nets on the other side of the boat?" He goes, "Are you serious? Well, you think there's like a wall underneath our boat that fish can't go underneath? We've been casting on this side. We've been casting all night long. But sure, Jesus, we'll do what you want." No other disciple said a thing, but Peter spoke out. So they cast the nets, and they catch more fish than they can handle. And he accepts Jesus. He says, "Man, that was awesome. I want to follow you. I want to learn from you. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to be with you." And at that point, he began to get some balance in his life. See, he had a lot of the world in him. He had a lot of the things in him that's not necessarily good. Things that Jesus kind of maybe frowned upon. But at this time, he begins to gain some balance in his life, some positive influence in his life. There's another story where he was in amongst the crowd. And Jesus already told him, "Hey, Peter, you're going to deny me at some point in your life. You're going to deny me. Matter of fact, let me be more specific than that. You're going to deny me 3 times. And he said, "No, I will never deny you. I love you. I live for you. I do everything for you. You're first in my life." And he says, that's true. But Peter, you will deny me. And the Bible goes on to say that that's exactly what happened. As people came to him and they began to ask him, hey, you're a follower of Jesus. You're one of his disciples. He said no, and he did it 3 times. He verbally said no. The balance in our life is the most important thing that we can possibly have. And Peter displays this time in and time out. He would begin to live his life, and he would gain some balance with Jesus and begin to do things special. He would witness what Jesus was doing. He was part of the inner circle. Matter of fact, if you look in the Bible, in the Bible that I have, it talks about the different disciples and their rank within the 12. And Peter was number 1. Peter was with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane whenever he asked them to pray. That's who Peter was. Peter meant the world to Jesus. Why? Because he's seen something special in him. He's seen a possibility. You see, Jesus at one time asked his disciples, who do you think I am? Who do you say that I am? And the disciples were just kind of saying different stuff that they had heard in the past from the crowds and stuff. And Peter said, no, you are the Messiah. You are the chosen one. And at that time, Jesus says, upon you, Peter, upon the rock I will build my church. Now, how can Jesus say that he would build something like a church, something so special with Peter when Peter was so rough around the edges and he had so many issues in his life? It's because Jesus seen something special in him. He knew that there was some good in his life, and he just had to take his life and kind of begin to pull out the good in him. So Peter himself could see that he has some worth. I hope one day that we all can decide to have some balance in our life, if you have not already. You see, Peter, when he would have lots of balance in his life, Jesus would refer to him as Peter, the new name that he gave him. But when Peter would begin to live a lifestyle that was in his past, when he would say things so brash, and when he would do things that was not good and things that Jesus wouldn't approve of, he called him Simon. He called him by his own name. And that was a clue to Peter. Hey, I need to suck it up and I need to get straight with him. I need to do the things that God is asking me to do. So then he would turn his life around and he would begin to do the things that God wanted him to do. He began to watch Jesus and learn even more intently. And then Jesus would refer to him as Peter, because he was doing something significant. He was doing something good. He was doing something that Jesus was asking him to do. We all have lifestyles. Your lifestyle is different than mine. It's just like bikes. Our lives are different. Totally different than one another. But the one thing in common that we all have is the love of Jesus. You see, Jesus didn't say, I'll love you because you're bald. He didn't say, I'll love you because you wear a certain type of clothing. No, Jesus is not a respecter of persons. He wants you, and he wants all of you. And that's one commonality that we all have as individuals. That's one thing that we all have in common as humans, is that Jesus loves us. How could he not love us? He created us. He gave us all of our specialties. Everything that we do, everything that we have, Jesus provided for us. And all he wants in return is our love back to him. Is our obedience to him. So I ask you again, the balance in your life, where does it stand? Where does it stand? Are you riding through this thing called life, and you seeing a bunch of signs on the road, and you're pulling off and you're engaging in those activities and you're doing those things, all well knowing that it's not what God has in plan and in store for your life? balance in your life will begin to shift one way or the other. And God wants your balance to be straight up. He wants you to be able to make the trip. He wants you to be able to get from point A to point B. He doesn't want you always falling over at the first rock in the road, or He doesn't want you to swerve whenever something gets in your way. No, He wants you to take those things head on and be strong and be the person that He knows you can be, because He knows that you're a leader and that there's something special about you. Peter was not perfect. He never was perfect. But he gave his heart and life to Jesus in obedience. And it was a work in progress every day of his life to maintain the balance with Him. I'm going to be straight up with you. It's difficult to have balance with God every day of your life. We're not perfect. Not one of us. We all have our faults and we all have our failures. But what I want to encourage you today is that you don't have to live your life because of those faults and failures. You don't have to let those things define who you are and say, I've done this and I've done that in my past, and there's no way possible that God can love me. There's no way that He can use me to lead anybody. There's no way possible. If that was the case, I would not be standing up here in front of you today. I've got too many faults and too many failures. I've done too many bad things. But one thing that I keep in my mind and in my heart is the hope and love of Jesus. And to know that no matter what I do, no matter how many times I screw up in life, that God has never left me, and He's always there, and He's just standing there saying, hey, you messed up. Oh well. Get up, brush your knees off. Let's live life. Let's do these things. Let's do it. And that's what keeps me going on. I love Jesus with everything that I have. My relationship with Him, I try to keep on the top shelf every day. But there's times where I'm going to fall. And there's times where I'm going to fail. There's times I'll get angry. There's times I'm going to say things that's not pleasant. There'll be times where I might have actions that are not great. And I've got to check myself every day. I got to have that balance in life. There's one thing in common with bikes. You get on them, you get off. You got to have balance. It doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter how shiny they are, how dull they are, how expensive they are, how cheap they are. There's one thing in common with bikes. They're bikes. They got two wheels. Some have three. You get on them, you get off of them. You got to have balance. There's one thing in common with us as individuals. As people who are struggling day in and day out, as people who are trying to figure this thing out called life, as people who are trying to figure out their own relationship with God, there's one thing in common, is that we all got to have balance. And when you become to get unbalanced in your life, that's when things begin to head downhill. And you need to refocus with God and come back to Him and get that balance back in your life. I hope today, whether it's in a few minutes or whether it's at some point in the day, I hope that you can take some time out, focus on your life, find the things that are not pleasing to Him. You know what they are. You know between good and wrong. You know what God wants for your life. Let's not try to fake each other out. You know what's right and what's wrong. As I told the students last Wednesday, I said, it doesn't take anybody special to go get drunk. It doesn't take anybody special to go get high. It doesn't take anybody special to lay in a bed with somebody they're not supposed to. It doesn't take anybody special at all. Anybody can do that. But God has called you specifically for a purpose in life, and that is special. That is something that nobody can take from you. And I wonder today, who's man enough to accept that call? Because anybody can push it aside and say, no, that's not for me. But it takes somebody strong. And it takes somebody special to step up to the plate and to step up and put that helmet on and say, yes, God, I accept the call and I accept the ministry that you have for me, no matter what it is, no matter what career path I have going on. That's what you have for me. And I'm going to step up and I'm going to be that person that you want me to be. Who's man enough? Who's woman enough to accept that? Because again, anybody can sin, anybody can do it. It's not a big deal, right? But who's man enough and who's woman enough to step up and stand up for Christ and say, I'm going to follow you. No matter if I lose friends, no matter if I lose some family members, no matter what kind of relationships I must lose. The most important relationship you can ever have in life is a relationship with God. And when you obtain that relationship and you begin to nurture that relationship, everything else will fall in place. Your marriages will become better. Your friendships with your friends will become more strong. Your life will become more fun than you could ever imagine. Everything else follows that one relationship, and that's the relationship with Jesus. Peter found it out. He found the balance in his life. He was lucky enough to be one of the select few to actually follow Christ. He was physically there to see the miracles that Jesus performed. All the signs and the wonders, he was there. Jesus gave him a brand new name. I ask you today, where is your balance? If you look to the world for pleasure and for balance, you're looking in the wrong place. But if you're looking to Christ and you're looking to strengthen that relationship with him, then your balance is in the right place.